Throughout Bogota's history, there have been representative places that have marked the city in one way or another, some not so popular but highly relevant in the social and cultural context. Below, we will explore the history of some sites of historical relevance to the city and provide some not so well but very interesting and disturbing facts.
The National Museum of Colombia is located in Bogota, over 7th Street. It was founded on July 28 of 1823 by the Congress of the Republic of Colombia. It was promoted by Simón Bolívar and Francisco de Paula Santander. It is the older museum in Colombia and the one of the oldest in Latin America. The museum is divided in four main collections: art, history, archaeology, and finally we can show the collection of ethnography.
The first floor has six rooms. The first room is closed. The second room possesses different pieces and elements of the Nariño's culture. The third is called "Town Without Forgetting" and have pieces of pre-Hispanic collection. The next room has technology and recordings of the TV shows in Colombia. The two last rooms have work of ethnography and works of the pre-colonial Colombia. The second floor has seven rooms that correspond to National Memory, Colonial and Republican Goldsmithing, B Territory, Recent Acquisitions, Make Society, Cabinet of Miniatures, and Earth as Resource. The third and the last floor has a beautiful view of the city and has a work of art. It is called Panoptic Look at the Art in the National Museum of Colombia. Now we're gonna talk about some curious facts. The first curious fact is that in the actual building where is located the museum, under the year of 1988, it was a jail. It called Central Penitentiary of the State of Cundinamarca. Even if you go to the museum, you can find some in the second floor, a draw created by one of the prisoners. The prison drew an interesting view of the older Bogota. The second curious fact is the oldest element in all the museum is a vessel from Puerto Cacho, which is the last 12,000 years old. The archaeologists found it near to Cartagena and arrived to the museum in 1988. The third curious fact is that the museum has a reserve that more of 20,000 pieces of different cultures and origins. One of them is a fragment of an Egyptian tomb that has a 2,000 years old. Finally, the curious fact most interesting is the sighting of a ghost. When the building of the museum was a jail, have been many stories about the torture dungeon of the first floor. Some of the methods of torture had ponds of calm water which they called the shower, torture traps, wooden pools with fixed chains. Some people say that in some rooms of the museum strange sounds appear and the presence of some ghost is felt. The Hospital San Juan de Dios has a terrible history behind him. Located in the center of Bogota, his story begins in the 16th century. It was the first hospital in Bogota and in the past was called San Pedro. It was founded on 1723 by the Bishop Fray Juan de los Barrios and it closed on September 29 of 2001. It was recognized like one of the important center public health and medicine research. The hospital helped people with low resources in a situation of indigence, without serious health problems and without other option for receiving care. Some curious facts are that this hospital has the best doctors in Colombia's history. It has the medical laboratory of Manuel Elgin Patarroyo, the office of Solomon Hawking, who created the veil from the normal pressure hydrocephalus, and where Dr. Jose del Carmen Acosta performed the first segmented cesarean section in the country. Now, If you want to visit the hospital, you can do it, but you should use mask. The extreme measures do not touch anything and be careful where you step because everywhere there is a risk of infection. The final curious fact is in this huge hospital, paranormal activity has been recorded. The presence of the patients who suffer and die inside the health center is still felt. There is also talk of a gnome who helped the nurses in the hospital and who appears as a ghost walking through the corridors. Also, they have seen spirits of some nurses, in addition to the stories that are told about the murder.
The Central Cemetery of Bogota is the oldest and the most reputable cemetery in the city. It was built in 1832 to bury corpses outside the city to avoid diseases and infections. For that reason, it was a priority to change the customs that threatened the hygiene and public health of the people of Bogota, because it was a Catholic custom to bury the dead under churches and convents. It was difficult for the people of Bogota to change their customs and see a field as a holy temple. For that, they took the highest Catholic authority of the city to bless the space. 4 years after putting into operation the public cemetery of Bogota, as it was known, the burial of the president of the time, Francisco de Paula Santander, took place, thus helping to remove rumors and myths of this cemetery. I will now mention some curious facts about this cemetery. They declared it a national monument on September 26, 1984, because of its imposing architecture and cultural contribution to the Colombian capital. In the ellipse of the cemetery, also known as the central area, lie the remains of former presidents, artists, and other illustrious figures of the history of the city and the country. Among the most visited tombs in this cemetery are those of Luis Carlos Galán Sarmiento, Julio Garavito Armero, Rafael Pombo, Leo Cobb, and Francisco de Paula Santander. Mondays are called the day of the blessed souls of the departed. You can see rituals of exchange of favors with some tombs. There are hundreds of stories about ghosts and paranormal entities. Thus, the cemetery has many testimonies from guards and staff who work there, who claim to see and hear shadows haunting the cemetery at night. Next, we have the last place, which is the tunnels located on Jimenez Avenue. On Jimenez Avenue, between Carrera Séptima and Octava, two large black metal gates have been tarnished by passaging time and the eternal reigns of the capital. These basements were built in 1939. This building was initially created as a commercial gallery under the old Rufino Jose Cuervo building. The corridor leads to different classrooms that in the 40s were commercial premises. With time, this building fell into disrepair and remained abandoned for several years until they later used it as an art school. Later, it was remodeled to build a theater, where hundreds of students of the Distrital University study and rehearse for their professional training as artists. This tunnel has its entrance on the western side of the Jimenez and the exit on the eastern side. However, in the past, the four corners of Jimenez Avenue had an entrance to the tunnel, but now the two corners of the north side are sealed. Following, we have some curious facts about these tunnels. Many people say that they live paranormal experience there. Usually, at night, the lights turn on off, there is interference in the sound, and they disappear. This structure was one of the few that could resist the Bogotazo. In the 60s, the waters of the San Francisco River covered this tunnel and it is still intact. Many rumors claim that these tunnels connect to the Palace of Justice and other important places. There are some rumors related to the missing persons in the Palace of Justice, in which it is said that the people rescued from there were killed in the tunnels.